comments as well.
Sure, thank you.
So please, yeah, at this time, let us take citizens' comments for any item that is on the agenda, or by the same token, the robotics, if anyone had any questions from the public that way. Yes, sir, could you come up to the microphone, please? And you had one as well? Please, stand behind him, be ready to speak. Thank you. Please state your name and address, hold the microphone. Thank you.
Ken Euro, Rising Road.
Does this is just township roads, or is it township and state roads? Because we do have a number of state roads, maintained roads. Are you going to travel on them?
We've only asked them to look at the township roads.
Just the township roads?
Yes.
Well, that lets me Rising Road
Well,
State.
we
it's
can't,
falling
we don't,
apart.
I understand, but we don't have any ability to do work on the state road. It's not our road to maintain.
Couldn't you give the report to the state?
Say something to the state, hey,
I see what you're saying.
because the Rising Road last year or 2 years ago collapsed to near Zany Farm, and guess what's going on again? It's collapsing again.
Thank you, sir. Name and
Could we
address?
consider, and just allowing them to drive it so that we could have pictures to send to the state? I mean, what they choose to do, and that is their choice.
You could have them drive the road and assess the state roads, and we could separate those out if you wanted that information, because it's the extra
I don't think it
$50 an hour.
Yeah.
$50 a mile.
Dan, aren't we supposed to take over that road mandated?
Portion of it.
Cecil Rising.
Cecil Rising,
Yeah, that's just the short part, past the, Stewart's right there, off of Rising Road.
Yes. And not Rising Road?
But they've already said they won't do anything until they're done with the tournament.
Miguel, you have a follow-up?
Yes.
Or,
Actually, yeah, in the case of the North Huntington data set, and this is actually fairly typical for municipal customers, we tend to do a lot of incidental collection of the state roads while we're in transit, because basically for many municipalities, you use the state roads to go to and from various neighborhoods. As a courtesy, we've always included any incidental coverage of state roads kind of driveways. We'd be happy to extend that to Cecil, and if there was further coverage required that wasn't basically incidental to our coverage, we'd be happy to cover that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
well, thank you. Next.
Ray Zaney, 45 Zaney Lane, off of Rising Road. I got a question for you two guys. Cecil Township has a history of roads sliding, state roads as well as municipal roads. Do you guys have anything incorporated, or would you incorporate something into your package to help identify potential slide areas?
What do you mean by slide? Like,
Or
landslides.
the landslides, that where the road gives way?
so the way our technology works is we're looking at the road.
Speak into the mic so that we can
So the
have
way
it
the
recorded.
technology works is we're looking at the road surface for different types of distresses. And that's used to assess pavements for their conditions. So the slides are more, I guess, dependent on this, on what's below, or if there's a wall holding up. So that might fall under other categories. Usually they don't, we haven't seen any, at least so far, where we have examples where the data set indicates that that might happen. And that's dependent on other factors, not easily visible on the road surface.
Well, you might be something you deal with developing yourself.
If that is the case, we will look at it.
Very well. Thank you, Rex. Next, Matt. Hand it to the lady behind you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think it needs to be brought to the residents' attention. They're a public works director, and he's to be commended on this. He did meet with PennDOT's district foreman in this area and did ride Bishop Road, Route 50, and Rising Road. He has pointed out to PennDOT the deficiencies and where they do need work on these state roads that run through Cecil Township. So I thank you, Bill, for that.
Very good.
Hi, I just had a couple of technical questions. So what cloud does the solution run on? Is it your own cloud or?
I can answer that.
Sure.
So currently we use managed services through Google Cloud, but all of our data is encrypted, and you would basically need our authentication credentials to get access to any of the data. So the only folks who would be able to access the data would be the township, the engineers, and ourselves.
Okay, and then, so there's an initial cost for the driving of the roads, but then we're talking about getting access to the data for an ongoing period of time. Is that part of that cost, or is there an ongoing, like, charge for access to that information, meaning after the time period, some time period is over, how does that work? And also to that, I know the images, you're gonna persist them on the cloud, there's storage costs related to that on an ongoing basis, or is that gonna be cost passed down to the township, or is that gonna be included?
So generally, the cost structure for storing the images is not a separate line item cost. Our costs are all inclusive. We tend to include, I'm sorry, I don't remember the specific term. It's either 2 or 3 years past the initial term of the contract as an inclusion. But generally what we prefer, and I think what we find that most municipalities are going to prefer, is that basically that period gets refreshed on any subsequent scanning. So if you basically get the next year's term, it basically pushes back that window of how long we keep your data. And then in theory, we would keep it indefinitely without additional charges.
So potentially, if we get a scan done now and then we don't do it, we'll have to keep talking to you about not losing the access to previous scans if we come back in 5 years and run through it.
But Dan, wouldn't it be accurate to say that at some point the scans become
Obsolete.
anyways? So even if we have a scan now and we decide not to do it down the road, going back and looking at a road from 5 years ago really wouldn't help us anyway.
That's why they want you to ongoing
Right.
process. That's really a good idea.
So I guess just an awareness of if that's a 2-year period or a 1-year period or a 5-year period, just to know, so we have a frame of reference if we want one from a year ago to make a comparison, or if it's something more frequent than that. So, okay.
Can I ask something what
Good
you're
question.
talking about? What about, is the township going to be able to print this out? This information, are they going to be able to print this out? So you were talking about an overlay before, so would they be able to print this out so they'll be able to see an overlay? Or are they going to have to depend on the cloud not losing it, or?
So there's kind of like 3 parts to that answer. The first part is that the township, we offer for basically a nominal fee. It's just the cost of the hard drive, basically. We always offer municipalities a chance to locally own copies of the data in case, for whatever reason, they choose not to use our service or feel uncomfortable with the cloud aspect of it. That's routine for us. The second aspect is that as far as we're concerned, basically access to the data is completely in the hands of the municipal government and or the engineering firm that contracts us for the work. So in that case, you would probably definitely be free to print it or otherwise use it. I believe I heard reference to including it in the township's GIS layers. So in that case, yes, you'd be able to look at it and print it pretty much freely.
So they could use it as an overlay from year to year to see how this is helping the township monitor the
Yes.
roads. But if you didn't have that, once you could, everyone could drive down the roads. Bill's driving down the roads, Mr. Bonifer. He's driving down the roads every day. He sees what roads are bad, and he does a pretty commendable job on it. But on the same token, this would be more of a tool for the township, for them to be able to monitor how much money they're going to need to require to be spending every year on the roads, so that they can budget it in properly.
It's certainly our hope that it's used for transparency and for basically making the process a little more accessible for everyone. So, yeah.
For the record, please may you give as well your name and address?
Yes, it's Robert Mikulski, 27 Glass Hill Road, McDonald, PA.
Very well. That'd be fine. And ma'am, with good questions?
Kara Sheridan, 58 North DePaul.
Very well, thank you, Ken. And next?
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to talk about with the robotics? My name is Elizabeth Sluciak Sites. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of my father, Dennis Sluciak. I reside at 231 Mingo Church Road in Finleyville, PA. Do you need me to give my dad's name and address?
Just yours is fine.
Okay.
You're speaking.
Okay.
And this is in regards to the...
This is in regards to the SPB Holdings application 2017-34 request for the conditional use. Second line item that will be voted on tonight. The access road, and again, this is on behalf of my father, so I need to speak to those people up here. The access route to the property from South Point Boulevard is limited access. This is a well-known fact. If anyone owning property in that area wishes to develop their property, they will not be able to access it from the entrance on a daily basis. There are gates there that West Penn Power could easily be forced to close and lock if that area picks up an activity. I have a small 2.399 acre piece of land where my more direct means of access at this point in time is by and through the South Point Boulevard entrance. That land was once part of the remaining farm that has been in my family for over 80 years. The state acquired...
Elizabeth, I just want to say for the record that this hearing is closed, so the board's not taking any additional testimony on this matter. In terms of a public comment, you're certainly free to give a public comment, but I want the board to understand that no additional evidence is being taken. The hearing itself is closed.
This would be just comments.
Okay.
And that is permissible, correct?
Public comment is fine during this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. This is pretty much just a plea to the board to take in consideration when they pass their vote tonight. Okay, where was I? Okay. The state acquired some of the property to construct the Clover Leaf and part of the South Point Boulevard. The land that SPB Holdings is looking to construct the storage units on currently belongs to my brother. I have an agreement with him, which is now in writing and can be furnished if need be, that if he were to develop that land, I would have access to my parcel by means of his driveway. If and when that development were to take place, I would then get permission from West Penn Power to get to my property. I have no reason to believe that I would not be granted permission. Same would be the case if I were to develop my property first. I could then approach him to construct a throughway by means of his property to Blue Jay Drive for access. I am simply asking that the township, as part of their conditional use, enable me to continue to have access through the land to my property. If my request is not granted, I essentially can never build on that property, as anything I put there will require more usage than what PennDOT will grant me. This would landlock my property and virtually deem it unusable and valueless. If West Penn Power is instructed to lock the gate on a regular basis, not only am I unable to get to my property, but the township would also be at a huge disadvantage. Cecil Township's Public Works will no longer have easy access to their salt shed. Furthermore, with the access to the township that the township currently has to their salt shed, I am not certain that West Penn Power has the legal authority to grant permission to enter via the limited access entrance. I believe that permission to use that entrance can be granted by PennDOT alone. At this point in time, the township, given that its status as a governing body with a municipality that has a need for that salt shed, and with it being an emergency service that is provided to the township as a whole, permission may be more easily granted. However, the limited access, again, was granted to West Penn Power for their sole use of that entrance. Even if they are granted access in the case of emergencies, would it not be advantageous for the township to have a second means of ingress and egress? I'm sure that the township does not want to waste valuable time and energy having to make phone calls to get personnel to unlock West Penn Power's gate to pick up a load of salt in the event of a snowstorm. The storage facility is a good use for that land. I'm not objecting to them building it at that location. I cannot see them using the argument that that driveway would be constructed as strictly a private drive. Is a storage facility not geared for making money from the public? Would the township not benefit from them constructing this facility as well in terms of tax revenue? When making your decision to approve the conditional use for construction of the facility, I urge you to consider the request of making the roadway public and making sure that they design it so that way not only myself but also the township can use it to access our respective properties. So we are not in a position where we are landlocked, or at the very least, help me to ensure that they honor the agreement that was made with my brother and nephews long ago and to not be landlocked permanently.
Very well. Thank you, Ms. Sluciak.